Welcome back, everyone. This is Dave from Cobra Productions, here to strike first, strike hard, and show no mercy to Cobra Kai, Season 4, Episode 1, Let's Begin, the season premiere. The episode's description reads as follows. Johnny and Daniel combine their dojos, but their opposing styles clash immediately. Kreese tries to recruit an old ally. The episode was directed by John Hurwitz and Hayden Schlossberg. The episode was written by staff writer Matea Green, whose last work was on Season 3's The Good, the Bad, and the Badass. Green served as a staff writer on both Season 4 and Season 5 of the show. Before going any further, I will tell you a couple of things. One, this is not a spoiler-free podcast, so if you haven't watched the episode, I highly recommend you go and check it out, and then come back and give me a listen. Secondly, if you are on one of the platforms that this podcast is now listenable, please follow. You can also head over to my YouTube channel, Cobra Productions, where additional content can be discovered. If you're already on my YouTube channel, please like, share, and comment, as well as subscribing to my channel. I'm sure you've noticed, but I'm now beginning to look at individual episodes of Season 4 after completing my look at Season 3. I figured, what the hey, might as well, as my viewing numbers have been pretty decent. And plus, regardless, I do enjoy talking about this series. This season is probably my favorite of the entire 5 seasons. In this season, we do a lot with mixing up of relationships between the main cast. We have Amanda and Tori with their little arc, Samantha and Johnny, Miguel and Daniel. I love how Johnny and Daniel demonstrate in small ways what they picked up from each other throughout the season, even after their partnership implodes. There's a lot to love about the season, so let's get to it, shall we? We begin the season at a rich person's house. This person, namely Terry Silver, is playing the piano with his long hair in a red robe, and he gets a phone call from someone unknown. It turns out to be Kreese, saying long time, which was what we saw in the Season 3 finale. So that's one mystery solved. And really, it wasn't a mystery at all, because we pretty much all called this. And after he hangs up the phone, Terry keeps playing. And I gotta say, he's quite good at playing the piano for being a psychopath. I'm sure there are plenty of psychopaths that are also very good at playing the piano. I won't discriminate against them, assuming that they can't play the piano, because I'm pretty sure they probably can. They can probably do lots of things, including, killing people, which is something that I don't do very well. Anyway, moving along. We cut to the end of last season, as Daniel says, ready? And Johnny says, let's begin. But then there's a long, awkward pause in which the kids all look at each other confused. And wouldn't you know it, Dimitri is the one to raise his hand and ask, begin what exactly? And Johnny and Daniel probably should have, talked about this in advance, exactly what they were going to do. Daniel starts a speech, and Johnny constantly interjects here and there. They are not on the same page at all. The montage highlighting their big-time differences is fun to watch. We frequently see Daniel being annoyed with Johnny, which is comedy gold. It's always fun watching these two butt heads against each other. We see Miyagi-Do waxing on and waxing off of Daniel's cars. Meanwhile, Johnny has Eagle Fang cleaning out his car filled with beer bottles. We cut to Tori, who's beating a dummy, still remembering the fight with Sam. We see this in flashbacks. Meanwhile, Kyler is being Kyler and being a gooftard. I kind of hope that I can coin that phrase. You heard it here first. This is the beginning of gooftard. Anyway, moving along. She tells them that they are pathetic, that they could have won that fight. Kyler couldn't even beat a person who was in a wheelchair not that long ago. And those were my points exactly. But anyway. Oh, you're calling them pathetic, are you, Tori? Well, you know what, Tori? You should be in jail. Oh, no, I didn't. Oh, yes, I did. Come to think of it, why the hell aren't you in jail? I can't wait to hear what I'm sure is a perfectly reasonable explanation for that. In comes Robbie, who had nothing to do with the fight at the Russo home, which is something that further annoys Tori. Robbie goes to the back, which is basically where Robbie is staying these days, and Kreese decides to give him some crap for being late. But Robbie isn't late for anything because he never joined. Well, you could have fooled me. I mean, you were wearing a gi at the end of Season 3, practicing with Kreese, so I'm not really totally sure. It seems like a backward step in his characterization, and going backwards from what we saw in the Season 3 finale. Robbie says that he did not join, he just needed a place to crash. Kreese says, crash as long as you want, and Robbie responds that he isn't going to be a pawn in the bet he made with Johnny and Daniel. But Kreese says he's not a pawn, he's a king. He has more talent than his father ever did. And it's not about the trophy, it's about being a champion. How much of this is sincere and how much of this is to serve his own agenda, not really sure. You never know with Kreese, but it always seems like he believes what he says. Cut to the Russo home. Sam and Daniel are getting home, accidentally setting off the alarm that they should have had last season, but better late than never, I suppose. Amanda comes running in with a bat, with Anthony in tow, who's actually in this season, unfortunately, I would say. He may have thinned out, but he is still very much a little turd. Amanda and Daniel have a glass of wine, saying that the new security system is just putting her more on edge, rather than giving her the peace that she hoped it would give her. She says that the Cobra Kai menaces should be in jail. Well, Amanda, you had your chance to do exactly that. And Daniel says that they still could go to the police. Exactly how long has it been since the fight at the house? Because I'm sure there's a statute of limitations on when you can call the police on something of that nature. And I'm assuming it's not very long. But Amanda says that they've already talked about that. They don't want to put Sam through it, which that part of the argument is horse manure. But then Amanda says that their business can't survive another PR nightmare. That explanation makes a tad more sense, but would they really be the ones tattooed with this, given the fact that the house was unprovoked in their own home? Amanda also points out that a small boy, Bert, was defenestrationed through their window. That's not her exact words, but hey, I know a new word now, thanks to Cobra Kai Season 3 finale, and I might as well use it. She isn't thrilled that their family's safety comes down to a karate tournament. Daniel is pinning his hopes on winning that tournament on Sam, and she doesn't seem to appreciate that, judging from the expression on her face. Dinner with Johnny, Miguel, Carmen, and her mother. Miguel's relationship is brought up with Samantha, which leads back to Johnny meeting up with Allie last season, unaware that he's causing a problem between Carmen and Johnny, bringing it up. They still aren't quite a couple. Later, when Johnny and Carmen are doing dishes, Johnny attempts to bring up their relationship and try to dispel the whole Allie thing, but Carmen says that they should take it slow, which is something that Johnny agrees to despite not being happy about it. Meanwhile, Kreese is taking up the phone call being hung up on him by Terry as a sign that he should try harder and go to Terry's house and talk to him in person. Yeah, I'm not sure that's the best way to go. I especially wouldn't do this in real life. But this is not real life. This is a television show with its own rules. If there are any rules in this universe, there doesn't really seem to be any. Anyway, Kreese goes to Terry's house and sees a maid, and then Terry himself, who does not look pleased to see him. As it turns out, he's in the middle of a party with his upper-class friends. Kreese is invited to the party, much to Terry's chagrin. Johnny and Daniel have decided that they will still train together, but separately. So Johnny goes to the front, and Daniel remains in the back. Johnny is clearly out to punish Hawk by making the whole class practice front sweeps on him. Hawk's part in this episode, and indeed his overall arc this season, goes a long way towards earning that sudden turnaround in the fight in the Season 3 finale. He wasn't instantly redeemed, and actually still has a long way to go to be the better version of himself. I appreciated that throughout this season, and in the next. Robbie is lifting weights at Cobra Kai. Tori stands over him and tells him he's supposed to have a spotter, but Robbie is too cool for a spotter. Robbie is another one with a decent arc this season. That more suits Tanner Buchanan's acting style. Tori says he's upgraded from running away to hiding, and then calls him out on not being at the fight at the LaRusso home. He probably wasn't there because he's not a total moron, just a partial one. He asks her what she was even thinking about with that stunt. Tori sees this as straddling the fence and sticking up for Sam. No, it's about not ending up back in juvie, or hell, just straight up in jail, you crazy psychotic psycho. Anyway, she says, if you're gonna stay on defense, this probably isn't the dojo for you. Kreese is hanging out with Terry's new tofu-eating vegan friends, and he's not too impressed by them. Too new agey for Kreese, and he's very annoyed by this mustache-twirling person who says that karate is adorable. I'm actually surprised at the level of restraint that Kreese exercises here. I figured he would have karate kicked and chopped every one of them by now, but he hasn't. He's maintained his cool. We cut back to Daniel, who's trying his more meditative version of karate, but is interrupted by Johnny outside with his more brute force style of karate, and causing his kids to laugh with some of the things that Johnny is saying. Daniel ends up fighting with Johnny, big surprise there. Hawk goes into another part of the dojo and gets some crap from Chris and Nathaniel, with Dimitri wanting to stick up for him, but clearly not doing so. He tries to apologize, but nobody seems to want to listen to him. Hawk goes to Daniel and says he doesn't feel like he's fitting in there, and Daniel snaps at him because he's in the middle of fighting with Johnny, really, when it comes down to it, and he says, "What'd you expect? You burned the bridges with everybody here." Hawk, upset, storms off, and Daniel looks upset and tries to call after him. And this ends up continuing the fight with Johnny, which never really ended, it seems. They fight in front of the kids, and they seem forlorn, especially Sam and Miguel, who want this to work. Miguel tries to convince Johnny to make it work, but it doesn't seem like it's going very well until Miguel brings up Rocky 3 and how Apollo reached out to Rocky to try to make things work despite the history for the greater good in beating Clubber Lang. This is the kind of language that Johnny can understand, and it's the way to get him to do what you want him to do, is bring up Rocky 3 or any 80s movie references, though I'm really kind of surprised that he doesn't also bring up the Karate Kid. Too meta, I suppose? Johnny asks, well, why can't LaRusso be Apollo? And Miguel says that striking first is more badass, speaking Johnny's language, as always. Johnny says he'll think about it. Miguel calls Samantha to see if she's having any better luck with Daniel. And Samantha says that she's not sure she convinced him, but the two of them still believe that the two dojos would be better off working together. And Samantha has another little thing up her sleeve. She's at the skater park, ready to talk to Robbie. I guess she also is trying to be Apollo. This conversation doesn't go too well, mostly because Robbie is too filled with anger. Too much anger directed at his father, at LaRusso, at Sam, and at the world, really, when it comes down to it. We cut back to Terry, and Terry wants to know what Kreese wants, and Kreese says to finish what they started. Terry finds this very amusing. Oh, you mean like how we were supposed to finish what we started 35 years ago when you suddenly vanished after the events of Karate Kid 3? Kreese doesn't think that Terry is being true to himself, that he's being fake. Kreese makes an impassioned speech that there's a whole generations of kids that could use the knowledge that the two of them have. The only thing standing in their way is Daniel LaRusso. Terry, acting more like himself, responds, "Danny boy?" with an amused smile. He's even more amused when he finds out that Kreese's champ and Daniel are working together. And Kreese ends up asking, "So what do you say? Will you join me?" And Terry thinks on it for a minute and then dramatically says, "No." We get some justifications for the insanity of Karate Kid 3, which is highly, highly amusing. Basically, they did a good job of making Terry a three-dimensional character during the course of this season. Certainly a better job than they do in season 5 when they just turn him back into a straight-up villain for the most part, without the shadings that this season ends up giving him. He was basically hyped up on cocaine, and he finds it insane that he made it his mission to terrorize a teenager. And after the events of Karate Kid 3, he bottomed out, but eventually got back on his feet through a mixture of therapy and whatever. But Kreese says that people expect that people of their age are expected to go into the sunset. That might work for Terry, but Kreese still has some fight in him. Johnny is practicing what to say to LaRusso when who should knock at the door with some chorus but Danny Boy himself. I guess LaRusso gets to be Apollo after all. They try, but Daniel blows it right off the bat with telling Johnny to join Miyagi-Do. It devolves from there to the point where Daniel asks, "How is this ever going to work?" And Johnny says, "It's not." Daniel says that if this is final, they're going to have to tell the kids. And Johnny says that they'll rip off the Band-Aid tomorrow. Samantha is sitting in the back of one of Miyagi's old cars. Miguel soon joins her. Makes a joke that Sam doesn't even smile at. They see Hawk with a sledgehammer, looking angry, and foreboding music plays. Meanwhile, at Cobra Kai, Kyler, Tori, and the rest of Cobra Kai enters the dojo, while Robbie is standing there in a gi, saying that with Kreese not being back yet, he's going to get them warmed up. They do not immediately respond to that. In fact, Kyler tells him to get the heck out of there. Tori asks, what makes him think that they even want him? And Robbie says, okay, anyone manages to land a blow on me, and I'll leave. Kyler starts and finds himself quickly on the floor, because of course he does. I mean, really, when it comes down to it, Kyler is all bravado and no actual skill. He gets his ass handed to him more often than not. More try to attack, and it ends just as badly. Pretty fun fight scene that ends with Tori eventually landing a last-second hit with a kick when Robbie was showing mercy. Robbie says, a deal is a deal. He'll go. But Tori says, no. Stay. Daniel drives up to his dojo, sees Johnny already there, driving the stolen vehicle from last season that was referenced in the earlier scene between the two of them. Daniel and Johnny can't even get past hello without sniping at each other. They hear a bang and run to the back of the dojo where they see Hawk hammering down a fence. Daniel asks, what the heck are you doing? And Hawk tells him, he was right. They were both right. Talk is cheap, so he's building a bridge. And Dimitri is quick to pipe in, saying, more specifically, they are building an Okinawan sparring deck. Everyone in the dojo, from both dojos, is behind it, and Miguel says that they are all going to build it together, assuming their senseis approve. Daniel and Johnny stand there in awe, and then Daniel turns to Johnny and says, sounds good to me. Johnny more hesitantly says, yeah, sounds awesome, and both Miguel and Sam smile. Back at Kreese's dojo, Robbie says that Miyagi-Do and Eagle Fang are joining forces. They think, by doing so, they have the advantage, that they are better than us. He would know because he used to be one of them. And we see Terry, as we continue to hear Robbie talk about how at some point, you have to look at yourself and find out who you really are. Terry is asked to go to the cellar to get a bottle of wine by his wife. Or his girlfriend? I'm not even sure. Are they actually married? I'm not even really sure at this point. Actually, given the fact that what we see later in the season, I think they were just dating and not really married. Robbie says, it isn't how you start, but how you finish. As we see Kreese enter from the back of his dojo, he says that it helps to know your enemy's playbook, and that is why he's going to teach them Miyagi-Do karate, so they can beat Miyagi-Do karate. And we see Kreese enter with a smile. Robbie says to Kreese that they are warmed up for you, Sensei, and Kreese gives Robbie a nod of respect. All things considered, a pretty good speech, and well delivered by Tanner Buchanan. Credit where credit is due, and I gave him plenty of crap last season for his lack of acting ability, or really the fact that he was trying to play scenes that don't really play to his strengths as an actor. We see Terry in the basement, and he decides to kick a bottle, signifying that he's about to return to his old self. Dun, dun, dun. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the episode. Good start to what I think is a pretty great season. If you like this podcast and want to support the channel, there are a number of ways to do so. You can join my Corman Productions Facebook page. You can follow me on Twitter at Core Productions. You can buy me a coffee, which is a new way to support content creators such as myself. You can buy something from the Corman Productions store on Zazzle. And of course, you can like, share, and comment, as well as subscribing to my channel. This is Dave from Corman Productions, signing off.